Switzerland, a land known for its mountains, banks, and chocolate, and also being one of the richest countries in the world. But it really shouldn't be. Switzerland is a landlocked country with no natural resources, no unifying language, and borders that make no geographical sense. And for centuries it was surrounded by powerful empires looking to conquer it. This is the story of how Switzerland defied the odds to become one of the richest countries in the world when it really should not exist. It all began 700 years ago in 1291. Three men met peacefully in a meadow to form an alliance. They made a promise to help each other through good times and bad. A bit unusual for the time, there was no bloodshed, beheadings, or attacks. This alliance would become known as the birth of Switzerland. 24 years later in 1315, this Swiss alliance would fight its first major battle together in the Battle of Morgarten. Taking on the well-equipped and trained Austrian army that was invading the Swiss territory of Schwyz, this was really a David and Goliath battle. Many Swiss farmers had never fought before, and the Swiss had no real chance. As the story goes, the Schwyz people were warned by their neighbors of the Austrians' coming invasion and quickly sent their men with the support of 600 other men from the other two factions of the alliance to head to Sattel and try to intercept the enemy. There, along a small path in between two lakes, the Swiss people set a roadblock and prepared to ambush the Austrian army. This battle saw 1,500 Austrians killed in an ambush by the Swiss alliance put together by a militia of herdsmen and farmers. Unfamiliar with the customs between knights, the Swiss Confederates continued attacking the retreating troops, with some even choosing to jump in the lake rather than face the brutality of the Swiss. It was a resounding victory for the Swiss Confederation and led to a steady expansion of the Swiss alliance. The city of Lucerne deciding to join the alliance, and soon after, Zurich joined. The Swiss Confederation was growing into a sizable amount of territory. For the next few centuries, these Swiss cities were bound together by alliances just like many Italian city-states. This also explains why Switzerland has no one big capital like Paris or London, but a group of more or less equal cities. In the early 1500s, the Swiss Confederation was growing in size, defeating the Austrians, crushing the Burgundians, and earning a reputation of being nearly undefeatable. 25,000 Swiss troops began descending on northern Italy, capturing town after town, and even capturing the city of Milan from the French. They looked unstoppable. However, things would soon take a sudden turn. In 1515, the French hit back battling the Swiss in Marignano, a small village in northern Italy. The Swiss troops were crushed. At this point, you would think the Swiss would continue the fight or plan for revenge, but they did something surprising. They decided to just give up and make peace with the French, giving them back the city of Milan. They didn't know it at the time, but this loss to the French and end to the fighting marked the beginning of Swiss neutrality as we know it today. Although the Swiss were done fighting as a country, they were still notoriously well known as having some of the strongest, most relentless fighters in Europe. And this is when the Switzerland Confederation saw a huge opportunity. Why fight wars of its own when it can hire out its men to other armies and make money doing it? Manpower was one of Switzerland's earliest exports, where Swiss soldiers were bought and sold to other armies. Unlike other mercenary troops, hiring Swiss mercenaries meant you were getting not just a few stray troops, but an entire battalion of troops and officers working together as a battle-tested unit. Swiss mercenaries would go on to fight for nearly every European power, and in some cases, they even fought each other when rented out by opposing sides. Swiss mercenary armies were eventually abolished in the mid-19th century, except for the Pope's Swiss Guard, which continues to live on today. Switzerland would keep its neutrality in most conflicts up until Napoleon and the French invaded in 1798 and wiped out the old confederation of 13 mini-states. Up until this point, Switzerland has been surrounded by more powerful countries for hundreds of years and only conquered once. Cut off by the mountains, Switzerland had been like an island for most of history, not having to deal with ongoing wars in Europe or new empires rising to power. This all changed with Napoleon. The first thing he did was create the Helvetic Republic, a unitary state with a central government, and had the creation of the Swiss national flag, which we still see today. Just kidding. This experiment didn't last long, collapsing after 5 years and having Napoleon turn it back into a new and improved version of the old Confederation. In 1815, after the downfall of Napoleon, The Congress of Vienna fully re-established Switzerland's independence, and the European powers agreed to permanently recognize Swiss neutrality. This guaranteed neutrality from any war or conflicts led to a huge influx of money into Swiss banks from wealthy people across Europe. They were looking for a safe place to store their money if their own country went into war, and Switzerland offered that. Another major benefit was that 100 years earlier, Switzerland had created a bank secrecy law, making it illegal to disclose any personal information of anyone using a Swiss bank account. While the rest of Europe was busy carving out their empires with colonization and fighting conflicts, Switzerland was focused on using neutrality to offer protections to the wealthy and grow its arms in industry and banking. The Swiss also made many powerful economic moves. They abolished internal tariffs, created a single currency, and gave citizens the freedom to move to any part of the country, all of which would happen a century later in the rest of Europe. Switzerland was ahead of their times. Before the Swiss franc, the money market was a mess in Switzerland. With over 860 different types of coins being in circulation, creating a single currency helped connect the country. At this time, General Dufour realized there was a lack of national cohesion under the Swiss army and the need for a unifying flag. This led to the Swiss flag we know of today, which was designed to be square like past cantonal flags before it. Switzerland is only one of two countries with a square flag, with the other being Vatican City, protected by the Swiss Guard. Coincidence? I think not. After a small civil war, the Switzerland Federation was founded in 1848. Unlike any other country, Switzerland used a system known as direct democracy, where the people would vote directly on policies instead of being voted by elected officials. This system has two effects. The first is that Swiss taxes are much lower compared to other countries because the public get to review and vote on whether a government expenditure gets approved. The second effect is that any large public policy decisions take much longer to get put into law, needing to win the approval of the public through a referendum. For instance, women wouldn't get the right to vote until 1971, much later compared to other countries. This system of direct democracy works in Switzerland's favor, as it has helped ensure the political stability needed to support banking secrecy. Another way Swiss banking makes sense is that the Swiss Alps provide a natural environment for creating hidden underground vaults to store gold, diamonds, and other precious assets for the rich. In the 1910s, with the start of World War I, Swiss bankers traveled to France to advertise Swiss banking secrecy. Switzerland offered numbered bank accounts, where the person's name was replaced with a multi-digit number, known only to the client, and select private banks. As many European powers increased taxes to finance the war effort, Switzerland saw a rapid influx of money from wealthy Europeans aiming to shelter their money. And since Switzerland was split into regions that spoke different languages, the French could bank in Geneva, the Germans in Zurich, and the Italians in Lugano. Moving into World War II, Switzerland stayed neutral, but in many ways, its economy served the Axis powers, storing gold that Germany had stolen, and lending money to both Germany and Italy to support their aggressive military campaign. The Swiss bank UBS even maintained an account for Hitler, estimated at 1.1 billion Reichsmark. At the same time, Swiss banks also maintained accounts for hundreds of German Jewish business people and households looking for a safe storage place from the Axis powers. Because of this, in 1934, Switzerland decided to further boost their enforcement of banking secrecy by making it a federal offense to violate any banking secrecy rules. In 1940, when Germany created plans for an invasion of Switzerland, Swiss banks began transporting Jewish assets to underground military bunkers in the mountains for protection. If faced with a German invasion, which many people thought was inevitable, the Swiss would be able to retreat into the mountains and fight prolonged guerrilla warfare. However, given Switzerland lacked any natural resources and would be extremely difficult to invade with the mountainous terrain, Germany ultimately decided not to, and the invasion never happened. Switzerland would continue its diplomatic neutrality until the end of the war. As strange as it sounds, Switzerland tends to shine best when other countries go to war. Wealthy people flee to Switzerland for safety, or choose to move their assets there to avoid being heavily taxed when war efforts ramp up. Having not been involved in either world wars, Switzerland's cities had benefited greatly from not being destroyed compared to the rest of Europe. It became clear to the rest of the world that Switzerland could be a lifeboat to shelter in a storm. After World War II, it was discovered that the Axis powers assets had used Switzerland to store many stolen assets during the wars. There were many calls for the removal of bank secrecy by the UK and France, which were unsuccessful. During the 20th century, there would also be the formation United Nations, a global organization aimed at bringing countries together to solve conflicts and prevent another world war from happening. Bringing countries together for peace and resolution. The EU also formed in 1993 to bring economic and political unification across Europe. You would think Switzerland would be all for this and join both right away, right? Wrong. If there's one thing that the Swiss hate, it's being controlled or needing approval from outside parties. This is why Switzerland chose not to join the EU and didn't join the UN until 2002, even though it was headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. Banking has continued to be a dominant industry in Switzerland, with total banking assets amounting to over $3 trillion, more than the Swiss GDP. Swiss banks currently manage $2.4 trillion worth of assets, more than any other country in the world, with most of the wealth originating from France, Germany, and Saudi Arabia. While Switzerland has some measures in place to ensure the legitimacy of how the assets were earned, there has still been a fair number of controversies. One of the reasons the world's rich prefer Swiss banks is their reputation for being guarantors of stability. In comparison, British and American banks have shifted to be more focused on making money and taking risk than keeping their customers' funds stable. While this helps bring more wealth to the bankers and the economy, it can lead to bank runs and other meltdowns. This is why billionaires choose to bank in Switzerland, even when Swiss banks have negative interest rates, where you have to pay interest on your money to keep it stored in a Swiss bank account. There is trust in Swiss banks that cannot be matched by other banks in the US or other parts of the world. Alongside banking, Switzerland has a long tradition in high-quality specialized manufacturing in things like watches, optics, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. For food, they also are globally recognized for having some of the best cheeses and chocolate in the world. And as for inventiveness, there are many things you probably didn't know were Swiss, including aluminum foil, Velcro, and the electric toothbrush. Switzerland also has an integrated network of trains helping to drive the Swiss economy by transporting tourists to the mountains, commuters into the cities, and cargo across Europe. These Swiss trains live up to a reputation of being clean, comfortable, expensive, and almost always on time. In modern days, Switzerland has one of the highest qualities of living, a low crime rate, low unemployment, and attracts over 4 million tourists each year with its natural beauty. Where many great empires and republics have risen and fallen, Switzerland has survived against all odds. With limited natural resources, Switzerland has used its innovativeness, neutrality, and trust to rise into one of Europe's most wealthy nations. Switzerland can be both a beautiful retreat from the outside world and a lifeboat to shelter in a storm. Every year, a national survey asks Swiss people what they associate with their country. And every year the same two responses come up the most: peace and neutrality. Both of these reasons help explain how Switzerland grew into a banking powerhouse and one of the richest countries in the world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this.